Do you would you refuse to tender if you didn't like when they take private after a certain percentage they can force you, but up to that you don't have to tender. Would you refuse to tender if you don't like
we're going to fight City Hall because we're going to sit there in a minority position. It
So
hasn't come up yet. Well, it hasn't. There's somebody might make a counter offer, and it's very unfortunate because they're a very high class family. The guy who runs it, and his father, Tommy Frisk, and his father, the Frist family. The brother is Billy Frist, who's the head of the Senate. Now, Billy Frist is a super guy. He's a doctor. I've met him, and he has nothing really to do with the company. But they talk about Hospital Corp and the Frist family, and of course they talk about Billy Frist, who may try to run and replace Bush. So he's a high image guy. But as far as the company is concerned, he doesn't have very much.
And you don't like it when politics sort of influences the economy through the media. I mean, through ways that may or may not be legitimate. And I think it sort of bugs you that. Sarbanes-Oxley. You've told me Sarbanes-Oxley is kind of an exaggeration. And
yeah, the point is that there's all negative, and they're trying to find negative publicity. And sure, some of these guys, take Bernie Ebbers, he happens to be a Canadian. He's cooling his heels in jail for 25 years for his performance. WorldCom. Now, I've known Bernie for a long time, and we used to come to these meetings, Suter and I. He said, "Oh, here come the Canucks." Bernie couldn't conduct all that unless he had the analysts and the big finance firms playing in the same sort of game. He's a smart guy, but he had no particular background, and to come and do all that. All right, they nailed him. Then they go after Arthur Andersen, the accounting firm, and they nail accounting firms out of business. They didn't particularly.
That's the Enron, I believe.
Yes, they were the Enron guys. So they haven't nailed, they're getting to Enron, but they nail Arthur Andersen. So we have basically 4 big accounting firms. It's a nice little cartel. And I'll give you a local case in Montreal where they write the members of the university club and they say, "You can't afford us anymore, go get some other auditors that you can get." Well, I mean, that just infuriates me. So they cut from 5 down to 4, and then the boys do this. Now, they're asked to do a whole lot more services, and they got so many things to do.
On Sarbanes-Oxley, do you think, for instance, and one of the big objections by major corporations who sometimes are now delisting from the U.S. markets and going to Europe and so on, is that you cannot seriously ask a CEO of a multi-billion-dollar corporation to vouch for every line of every figure in his annual report. Is that asking too much, or
yeah,
not?
well, it's nonsense. I mean, he can't do it. So you're going to take him off whatever his job is. Let's assume he's going to try and figure out we should go into China or you should go into Russia or wherever you want to go, and he's going to grow the business. You say, "Oh, no. You come and sign these forms and make sure that these forms are right. If you don't, you go to jail." The point is Sarbanes-Oxley haven't caught anybody. They wouldn't have caught. They came after the boys that we're talking about in one of these
with
things.
the old laws.
Yeah, and the old laws, they're still going to go to jail. So the old laws, I can see little benefit in Sarbanes-Oxley. A wild cost, particularly to entrepreneurial smaller companies.
And that's your specialty in Formula Growth Fund.
Is investing in them. So the climate currently is being hit by that. Now, you ask me over a longer term as an investor, for 46 years this has worked. But we hit these bad periods. And the United States are very, very flexible. And if Sarbanes-Oxley is causing as much trouble as I think it is, they'll get rid of Sarbanes-Oxley and they'll get it back in some sort of shape.
They'll have.
In the meantime,
they may amend it and save face. They may.
Oh yeah, and they're going to have a whole lot of bureaucrats who are got some stake in it, and they don't want to give up too quickly. I mean, you're going to have a lot of that stuff going on. But it's a terrible penalty to small companies. The cost to a smaller company, they might spend $1 million extra because of this. So you and I have a company. This was One Pacific, one the owner I asked 2 or 3 years ago. Sales are $200 million. They spent $1 million extra cost because of Sarbanes-Oxley and the accounting. The productivity is 0 from
and the
this.
time, the executive time spent on it.
That's very important.
Yes,
they got to spend their time doing what they got to do so they don't go to jail rather than growing the business.
But wasn't it time to crack the whip, though? Because you do want people trusting the markets. And if you don't crack a big whip, people may not believe you.
Yeah, the question was, this whip was passed with a very large vote and no time flat, 99 to 1 or something, and they had looked at the implications. Sure, you got to do something about it, and that's the problem. Each time that somebody does something wrong, there are a lot of people doing a lot of things wrong these days, there's a field day for the politicians and the press to come and point out this is wrong and that's wrong. Well, if you go after everybody, who's going to be left behind to make things grow?
Yes, you're right, and you're not the only one saying it. And some people feel the pendulum's going to swing back. I want to get back to formula growth fund,
Right.
because some of our friends have written it down and they're going to look it up in the Wall Street Journal tomorrow. But in fact, you call it an overgrown investment club because it's very private. Tell me your structure. Who's in there?
Well, we started with we had 11 people, 134,000 in 1960 when we started. One guy who was in the business, Peter Cross, said, why don't you set it up open-ended? So we want to let some more people in, we can get some more people. Well, we hadn't thought about that. We were trying to do what we were doing for our 11 people to learn and make money for ourselves and our friends. That was the purpose of the fund. But it became open, and that allowed us to get a lot more people in it. So we are not a normal fund. We don't have a prospectus. We can't sell in the United States and this sort of thing because we haven't gone to the SEC. Now, if we had a prospectus by a large Canadian top-flight legal firm, it might cost up to $300,000, and you know, the amount of money you got to make at a 1% fee to pay that doesn't make worth.
But I think philosophically you like it. I mean, now you're up to
Oh, yeah,
350.
no.
You don't want thousands and thousands.
We never
of it.
did want, no. We may need them because our guys are getting older, and you're going to have to sue people to replace those who've gone before. And
But
so,
you're choosy. It's 350 people that you basically
no,
know.
the 300. There's no magic name. The deal with the Securities Commission is as long as we behave ourselves and we know the people, we're allowed to let a few people in to replace those who go out.
And
But we're not allowed in total to have more units.